Hi there, Jade and everybody else. Jade, you just made a video which was deeply disrespectful to many of my close friends, including some of my ex-girlfriends who I have the deepest respect for. But according to you, they are not worthy of being with me or anybody else because they are, quote, sluts, unquote. You have this enormous prejudice and bigotry based on this really awkward categorization into sluts versus good girls. It's conservative bullshit, but you don't seem to even realize it. Besides, all these people that you disrespect just happens to be female. You don't show any disrespect for me. By any of the standards that people like you judge women, I would be a slut. But you don't call me that. Nobody does. Because I'm a man, so I'm privileged. We're allowed to have fun. Women are not. Of course, if you started bashing on men the way you're bashing women, it wouldn't make it okay, because two wrongs does not make one right. However, since you bash exclusively on women, this makes you not only a prejudiced bigot, but also a sexist, misogynistic bigot. And of course, that's not your intention. You call the whole thing feminism. I find that really interesting that you call this kind of position feminism. And of course, there are some feminists, some self-identified feminists who would agree with you. You are not alone in that. But what you're saying is not compatible with any reasonable feminist theory at all. Okay, first of all, why are people having sex? I could divide it into three categories. I'm going to call them slut and whore and bonding. But I need to point out that I don't mean anything negative with slut or whore. I think these words in themselves can be neutral. And most importantly, I mean them gender neutral. I know that people usually use them in a misogynistic way, make them apply only to women, having this outrageous double standard. But I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to apply the words equally. So, why are people having sex? First of all, some people do it because they find it pleasurable and fun. Let's call this category slut. Second, we have people who do it as a transaction. They do it in return for getting something else. Let's just simply call this whore. And finally, we have people who do it for bonding, for love or just emotional intimacy, without any transactional part, This is simply a mutual bond, not a service you provide in return for something else. Of course, these are not three different kinds of people, they are three different kinds of actions. The same person can be in one position one day, another day, and the third later that same day with the same person. You, Jade, seem to think that the slut version is entirely immoral. Maybe you think it's okay to have sex for fun within a relationship. Um, let's just assume that you think that's okay because you don't say anything to the contrary. But you go on about how it's wrong to have sexual fun if and only if you happen to be a woman who are single or in an open relationship. And let's leave cheating out of this. Of course, cheating is wrong. Cheating is a matter of lying and betraying. That's a completely different matter. But just having sex on good terms that everybody involved are okay with, including everybody in a relationship, if a relationship is present. You claim that this is wrong, and of course you're not alone with that. Some people have this very romantic view that the bonding kind of sex should be the only kind of sex allowed, that it's wrong to be a slut or whore in this sense. I find that kind of sentiment not really realistic. People have sex for fun or as a kind of transaction. And by the way, it's also the thing that is not either or. It can be a bit of all three things in the same intercourse. So yeah, it's not only three different kinds of actions, but also three different ways of having the same action. They can be at the same time with the same person, but I think you get the idea, hopefully. So anyway, I think it would be wrong to demand these deep emotional bonds of people. People do get horny without falling in love, and of course it's completely immoral to pretend to be in love with someone to use them. It is not okay to exploit people. But if you are honest with yourselves and each other and make sure to treat each other with respect, it doesn't really matter all that much what kind of sex you're having, as long as everybody involved is a consenting adult and everybody involved feels good about themselves and what they're doing. To each their own. The interesting thing, Jade, and I'm going to give you a bit of credit for this actually, is that you're not promoting this overly romantic ideal that everybody has to be so deeply in love. Instead, you argue that it's every woman's duty to be a whore instead of a slut. Of course, I'm using the word whore in a rather wide manner here. Just like you, I'm not talking just about money. I'm talking about sex as a bargaining tool within some kind of relationship. And you claim, and you claim this to be feminism, that it's wrong to have sex for free, but only if you're a woman. Somehow this doesn't apply to men. Obviously, it's women who need to use the sex as a bargaining tool to get other things in return, from the partner. And if sex is free, then you can't use sex to coerce people or whatever. Haven't we outgrown that kind of bullshit? Of course, I have read quite a bit about this in feminist theory. I have read people who say exactly the thing you are saying, except that you argue as if it's a good thing. And of course, these women did not. They use it as an example of how horrible patriarchy is. That women are so subjugated that they are forced to abandon having sex for fun. They are forced to abandon being a slut, and they are forced to push down other women for competing such unfairly with them, because their vagina is the only bargaining tool they have. So they need to keep their genitals as currency. And this is the mindset that you seem to be promoting in your two videos, the one you deleted and the one you just published. That women having sex for free lowers the market value of other women. And then you have the audacity to accuse these so-called sluts of accepting or even embracing objectification. You are the one turning women into objects. You are the one who claim that a woman's sexuality should be a commodity for sale, except that it shouldn't be for sale for cash. It should be just bargaining. But that's really sad, in my opinion. And I don't have anything against women who use sex as a bargaining tool, as long as they are honest about it. I don't like deceit. This is not as bad as cheating, perhaps, but it is the same basic bullshit. Deceit and lies and mental mazes and all the kind of stuff. If you want to use sex as a bargaining chip, sure, I won't be interested in you, because I'm primarily into the bonding kind of sex, secondarily into the slutty kind, just having fun together, mutual fun, not the exploitive kind. This bargaining chip kind of sex, I'm personally not very much into that. I am not into using it myself, and I'm not into having it used on me. And I'm not that desperate that I have to accept someone else using that kind of bargaining chips on me. It's really sad, the whole thing. So, Jade, you're trying to convince women that they must view their own bodies, their own genitals, as commodities, as something to be sold by the woman and purchased by a man, but not for cash, of course. I would guess that you have something against sex workers as well, atop of the slut-shaming bigotry. Also, this other kind of whore-stigma. Of course, there's no real distinction between whore-stigma and slut-shaming. It is the same basic thing, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if you have it specifically against sex workers as well. And seriously, there's nothing wrong with sex workers. I mean, as long as they're honest with what you're doing and make sure to not hurt themselves or others. But I think most women would have a very bad time if they went into sex work, it would be harmful to a lot of women, probably most women, and you are trying to convince all women that they need to get into this mindset, that they need to see themselves as commodities to be bought and sold, and then you taunt them with not having high enough price tag. You invite them to feel anxiety and shame over being cheap, as if they had a price tag in the first place. And that's not how it should work. Bodies do not have price tags, souls do not have price tags, and sex itself does not have a price tag. Selling a service, that's what have a price tag. And a slut is free in both sense of the word. Being free and being for free, mutual freedom, and that does not give anybody the right to take any liberties with this person. Consent is still central. You claim that it's okay to have sex with a slut just by saying hi to her, as if you don't need to check for consent. So you're pretty much buying into rape culture as well. And of course you don't mean that anybody should get raped. I don't think you mean any harm at all, Jade. It's this basic thing with known unknowns versus unknown unknowns. The known unknowns are the things that we know that we don't know, but the unknown unknowns are the things that we don't even know that we don't know. And you seem to be totally clueless about these things. You talked about bullying versus criticism. Well, all these things I'm saying to you are meant as criticism. I don't mean any harm, but I you don't mean any harm either. But I think that the things that you are saying to women are so much worse than the things I'm saying to you. And I'm not talking about me being right and you being wrong. I do, of course, think that I am right and you are wrong, but that's not my point here. No, my point is that I'm attacking your prejudices and your superficial views on other people, and these are views that you can't change easily. You, on the other hand, are assigning people a stigmatized identity and put them down for it, and call it bullying or call it criticism. In either case, it is dragging the person herself into the dirt. I, on the other hand, is merely running your views through the dirt, and your views suck. That doesn't mean that you suck as a person. I'm sure you mean well and intend no harm, and please grow the fuck up regarding these things. Abandon these misogynistic, women-hating prejudices. Seriously, this was one of the most annoying things for me growing up. All these female peers, I respected them, they respected me, but they did not respect each other. They called each other slut and whore and accused each other of not being virgins and blah 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 blah. Nobody ever cared whether or not I was a virgin, because we men are not required to be, and women shouldn't require to be that either. It's just old, outdated bullshit dogma. The reason that women need to be virgins and keep their virtue and blah 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 is this whole thing with patrilinear culture. I'm not talking about patriarchy here. It's very closely related to each other, however. Patriarchy or matriarchy, that is about a gender having the ruling class. Not that all men or all women are rulers, but that all rulers in the patriarchy are men and all rulers in the matriarchy are women. Of course, there can be a few exceptions. One woman can have power in the patriarchy, it's still a patriarchy because overwhelmingly the power is in male hands. Patrilinearity, on the other hand, and matrilinearity, that is about who gets to inherit. In a matrilinear society, heritage passes on from mother to children, and then we don't have to check for fatherhood. A man can simply raise the children of his sister to make sure to improve the chances for his own genes, and then just have sex with random women, and it's not a social stigma or anything. But in a patrilinear society, heritage passes from father to child, especially father to son, and then women having sex becomes a huge burden on society, becomes a threat to the entire social structure. So patrilinear model really fucking sucks, and most civilizations have been patrilinear for several thousand years, probably because those cultures were better at producing killers than other cultures, so they were better at invading and all that kind of nonsense. But in either case, thankfully, society is leaving patrilinearity behind, and matrilinearity too. We are approaching a system where gender doesn't have to matter anymore. We can be male or female or genderqueer. We can be intersexual or transsexual or cis or something in between or whatever. It doesn't have to matter. We're not quite there yet, and you, Jade, are one of the many evidences that no, we are not there yet. There are still so much bigotry against women, especially when it comes to sexuality. This whole thing that a woman must be controlled, and we men can run around and do whatever and get a pat on the shoulder, but somehow women need to be controlled. And this is just outdated cultural patterns. It's pointless oppression, and you're buying into it for no good reason. My guess is that the real reason is that you have grown up in a patriarchal culture and never really thought about it when it comes to these details. Since you call yourself a feminist, I guess you have tried to think a bit about it, but you have really missed a lot when it comes to these particular things. So please think it through a few more times. I really recommend the book, quote, Ethical Slut, unquote. The book is about sexuality and morality beyond the old patriarchal bullshit norms. By the way, social norms against sexuality, of course, it's not only about procreation, it's also about venereal diseases. People didn't used to know what that was. they only know that it was something scary, and people who had a lot of sex got hurt. And combined with the patriarchal culture, they got the idea that it's only women who are spreading disease, not men. And of course, that's bullshit as well. But these days, we know how the whole thing functions. We can have non-penetrative sex without any risk of spreading diseases, or we can use condoms. So that thing is out of the window as well. So what really remains is that people need to learn to respect themselves and respect each other. And that is not done through viewing yourself as a commodity or demanding that other people view themselves as commodities. And by the way, a little bit off topic, it's no point that assigning that view to sex workers. Those sex workers I've talked with do not view themselves as commodities. They are not selling themselves, they are not selling their bodies, they are selling services. Just like any other person having a job as a personal trainer or whatever, provide a service. And if a couple want to have that kind of dynamic, that the man provides presents and shelter and blah blah blah, while the woman provides sexual services, okay. If both parties are okay with it, that's their own issue. I don't want to judge them, but making that a norm, that's destructive bullshit. Trying to squeeze people into that norm, that is oppressive. And why do nobody ever expects the opposite? With a woman providing in various ways and the man providing the services. And why do people simply assume that everybody's heterosexual? Seriously, my lesbian friends, some of them are much sluttier. And again, I don't mean this in a bad way. I called myself a slut a while ago, remember? But okay, some of my lesbian friends are much sluttier than some of my heterosexual friends of either gender. So, come on, drop the bullshit normativity already. So, Jade, I hope I have given you a few things to think about without hurting your feelings too much. I hope you manage to take to heart these things I say about your views being prejudiced and bigoted. That you can find a middle ground between dismissing it. No, I'm a good person, therefore the things I say must be valid. No, that's not how it works. Or taking it to heart in the wrong way and just feeling bad about yourself. Instead, please try to improve your views, move away from the prejudice and grow as a person. I'm sure you can think in much better lines than you're currently doing. So I wish you all the best in your life. And again, if you think I've been patronizing, please remember that what you did to so many women, including some of my dear friends and some of my exes, but ironically, not me or any of my male friends. What you did to them was 10 times worse than what I did to you. So just suck it up, okay? But don't take it too hard either. I don't mean you any harm. Just like you hopefully don't mean so-called sluts any harm. So please think about the whole thing. And this goes out not only to Jade, but to anybody who thinks in those patterns. who have this kind of slut-shaming, whore-stigma, whatever. There's one writer I would like to recommend, but I haven't read her myself yet. I only read about her. Gail Peterson. She's a sociologist who claimed that the whore-stigma is the core of all misogyny, all this hatred against women, this thing that if you're a woman, you can always be branded as a whore or a slut. And of course, you can never be safe because there's always someone to declare that whatever you do, that particular thing happens to be slutty or hoary or whatever. So it's a really horrible kind of oppression. If you have that kind of mindset, grow out of it. Slut shaming is bigotry, whore-stigma is bigotry, and it's totally against having a decent view on human beings on either gender, because doing it is a bad thing in itself, regardless of whether you do it to one gender or both. And if you're doing it only to one gender, then it's also double standard. So that's all I have to say for this time. Have a good time and live long and prosper.